I'm going to go over. Okay, I think it's every now and then. I guess I think it's important. So I just want people who listen to my podcast to know exactly why I know, right? Because I know I sound, I'm positive, right? I don't need any books actually because I saw these things, right? I know. Right, so it's time to go over a couple of the incidents that I had in my life, right, and because I every time I go through it every now and then, but it's time to refresh some people's memories and also to let anyone who hasn't been listening to my program to in on the stories if they haven't already heard them. But I'm going to go through it again. Basically. The first time was it was in around 1977. I was almost 9 years old, and it was in the summer. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was a being in my room that wasn't human. And I mean, that's basically what happened here. Okay, I wake up in the middle of the night, right? I used to sleep in an attic, right? I slept on one side, my brother Davey slept on the other side, okay? And I wake up in the middle of the night, and the light was on. Well, a lot of times we would leave the light on all night. There was a big, bright light on the top of the steps, right? And, it illuminated the entire room. And it was, summer. I was sleeping with a blue blanket. I had it over my head, right? And I wake up in the middle of the night to this electronic humming sound, like a constant humming sound. And during this entire event, this humming sound never let up whatsoever. It was just like a constant, right, the whole time. And not only was there a humming sound, but there was something in the room, right? I could see it. I could see the shadow of its arm. It had 3 fingers on its hand, like 3 fingers that were like thick at the end that came to almost points, right? And like a thin arm, and I could see it looked like where an elbow would be, right? And this arm was moving closer to where my face was, like this, right up to where my head was, and then back again. And we kept on doing this, like this. Like almost ritualistically, right? And I'm like, what? I'm a little kid here. I don't know what the hell's going on. I was like, who's there? Right? And this thing the humming sound continued, and the thing kept going like this. I didn't know what was going on. And the only thing I could think of at the time was that it was a devil or a demon. That's the only idea that came into my head. So then I'm just thinking, whatever it is, I'm scared out of my mind, and I didn't want to look at it, so I peeked out of the blanket, but away from the direction of where that thing was standing. I didn't want to see it, and I looked on the other side of the room, and where my brother Davey was sleeping, and when I looked over at him, I mean, he was facing toward me. He was sound asleep, his eyes were closed, and I started yelling toward him, trying to get him to wake up, and he wouldn't wake up. And the humming sound continued. It was somewhat muffling my voice, right? So then I was really scared. I started screaming for my mom and dad, like for a while, for like 5-10 minutes, yelling for them. Nobody's coming. And the whole time, this hand is there's, the whole time, right? And so then I started praying. I didn't know what else to do. And I'm just, oh my God, so I'm praying and praying, and I would close my eyes, open them up again. The thing's still there. It wasn't going away. This whole event lasted for 20 minutes. At some point, even though I was scared out of my mind, somehow I passed out. And then it was like I slept, and then I woke up the next day. It was like 9:30 in the morning or something like that. And I remember going down and telling my mom everything. Hey, this is what happened. There was something in the room last night. And she didn't believe it. She said, it's just a dream. Then later on, when my dad came home, I told him, I realized at one point during that day that nobody's ever going to believe me. I'm just a kid. Even though I knew in my mind it was real. There was something there, right? There was some being there, right? And whatever it was, I thought it was a devil or a demon. I didn't know. At that time, I did not know that there was a possibility that I didn't know that aliens could possibly come to you and abduct you in the middle of the night. I didn't know anything about that. Never heard of that before. It wasn't until like 10 years later, somewhere in the late 80s, watching some documentary on TV about alien abduction, when I finally, I put 2 and 2 together. I was like, that's what it was. Right, so that was the first major thing that happened. And then in 1994, during a fishing trip with a buddy, a flying saucer showed up in the middle of the night, basically made no sound whatsoever. The thing was as big as a house and then just went away. And basically what happened was a buddy of mine called me up early afternoon, said he asked me if I wanted to go fishing at this private community called Beach Mountain Lakes, which is near Hazleton, Pennsylvania. He said he got permission to go in there. His mom knew somebody that lived there, and that person gave his mom permission to let him go fishing at this lake. And he wanted to know if I wanted to go too. I was like, yeah, I'll go. So he picked me up later that day, like 4:30, 5 o'clock or something like that. He didn't want to go fishing at the actual lake itself, but there was a pond off the lake that he wanted to try. And I was like, sure, why not? So we went there. I remember we got to this place. I remember it was the first day I was ever at a Walmart, by the way, because on the way there, we stopped at a Walmart in Hazleton to get tackle, fishing gear, fishing bait, snacks, drinks, stuff like that. And then we went to Beach Mountain Lakes. I remember he had to stop there and talk to a security guard to, get somebody's name or whatever so we can get in. And we drove into this place, and we drove to this pond, and it was still bright out when we got there. I probably was around 5:30, somewhere around there. I don't know. But anyway, we start fishing at this pond. We were there for hours, fishing. No luck at all. I remember catching nothing. I didn't even have a bite, nothing. Right, but I didn't care. I was just sitting there. We were talking, was fishing, smoking cigarettes, and then, it got dark. As time went on, it got pitch dark, and I turned around at one point. It was around 10 o'clock. Right, I turned around to get something out of the tackle box, a cigarette. And when I turned around, like behind me was like an open field. Like there was an open field with like tall grass, and on the perimeter was like the forest. There was one area on the perimeter where it was like opened up, it was bare. But anyway, in the forest area, I could see these 3 lights hovering behind the trees. It lined up horizontally, and it was moving behind the trees. And then it came out from behind the trees into the clearing area. But and meanwhile, I said to my buddy, I said, "Hey, what the hell's that?" And he was like, "I don't know." Right. So then the thing comes out, and then it comes right toward our our position was. Right. There was no sound from this thing whatsoever. It was as big as a house. Right. It was only 2.5 stories off the ground. But anyway, it got right to where we were and basically stopped in the sky. Stopped right there. It was just hovering there. Right. And my buddy has the flashlight, and he's shining it underneath it on its belly. And that's when I was like, that's when I got scared. I was like, let's get the hell out of here. Right. And he realized it too, so we start throwing all the stuff in the back of his pickup truck, right? And while we're doing that, the things start moving away in a different direction, but toward the forest where it came from. And so then we got in the truck, we're driving away, and the things, you could see it flying away, and it was really close to the top of the trees, right? No sound from this thing. It was amazing, right? And these 3 big giant lights were on the front of it. The lights at the whole time were always facing in our position, and never turned around or anything like that. The lights were like always facing in our toward where we were. And anyway, then we got on this dirt road. We started driving on this dirt road, and we had to stop for a minute because there was at least 20 deer that were crossing the road, this dirt road, and they were running away from the direction that thing where that thing had flown, like over the forest. And then after they were gone and we got out of there, I remember we weren't even talking. We were both in shock. And then we got to a donut shop in Hazleton, and I remember we went in there, and I was like, finally, I said to my buddy, I said, "That was a UFO," right? And the first thing he says, "I'm not saying nothing. I'm not telling anybody," right? Of course, because the stigma and everything, he didn't want to say anything. Of course, he did. He did talk about it later on, but and I've always told people about it, but. That thing was real, and there was no way it could have been. If you would have saw this thing, you would understand that there's no way this could have been made by humankind. I mean, this thing was it'd be impossible, right? There's just no way. So when I put what happened when I was a kid together with that thing in the bedroom, right, to that, right, there's no question in my mind, right? There's no doubt in my mind. There's a presence here that's smarter than humans. They're operating with different kinds of technology than we have, obviously. Right, so something's going on. So when we talk about this nonsense, this game that we've been playing with the government for all these years now, this nonsense game that our government plays with the people, right, all over the world. There obviously, I talked about this before. I think there's most certainly agreements between different countries. We got to keep this quiet. We can't let the people know. Oh my God. Right? They can handle it. They can handle it. The people at top, they can handle it. But no, not these peons. Not the peons who put us in these positions. Right? They can't handle it though. Like, we're peons to them. Everybody should be mad about this. And what really gets me angry about this whole situation is the fact that the mainstream media is just stupid. It's dumb. All the time they treat it like a joke. Nobody really educates themselves on this. They never do. It's always like, even today, like even when people start showing up on 60 Minutes, like David Fravor and stuff like that, like the 60 Minutes interviewers would be smirks on their face when they're trying to, because they just think it's funny, because they're acclimated to the stigma. They still think it's all goofy, because that's what the government was trying to make it sound like that since the 50s. They had a policy to say all the people were either drunk or they're making it up or it's a hoax, or they're crazy. So that's how, that stigma has stuck. Right, but now it seems like some people in the Pentagon, obviously, right, they wouldn't have came out with those videos. You wouldn't see people like Elizondo, coming public and talking about stuff like this, right? There seems like there is an element now that wants to try to get this information out, but there's forces back there still pulling back on it at the same time, making a fool out of everybody. I'm just angry about it, as you can see, and. I just, because I know when I see these people on everybody, even pro UFO people, makes me sick sometimes. I see they don't know yet. How do you not know yet? I mean, even if I didn't have my own personal experiences, if I were to read some of the documentation that's been compiled by so many different investigators over the years, if you were to sit down, like for instance, I've talked about different kind of UFO YouTube channels on my podcast several times already, Eyes on Cinema and also UFO-B, right? I've talked about those channels before. I know a lot of you people that listen to my podcast or watch my YouTube videos have watched the stuff on those channels. And when you look at the stuff on those channels, it's like stuff from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right? All different kinds of people talking to reporters, telling stories. These are real people over many, many years telling what happened. And they're not all liars. Like the scientific community, the mainstream media, they try to make all of this look like, it must be people just having hallucinations or telling lies or something like that. No. These people are telling you the truth. And a lot of times, a lot of these cases, there was evidence that was left behind. There's indentations in the ground from when the things landed. There's footprints. I mean, there's just so much. There's so much evidence right now. It's the preponderance of the evidence says for a fact that there's something going on this planet. There's something here that's not human, and we don't know what they're up to. That's a whole nother story. I know I've talked about this before too. I don't think what they're up to is any good. Most likely, it's not any good. That's what it seems like. That's for another day, though. I'm not going to get into that today. But anyway, that's why I know for a fact. I know for a fact that there's something here. And I just think it's just sad the way the situation it still continues to unfold. I know, I guess I don't have any patience anymore. I know a lot of people say, well, yeah, it's starting to come out a little bit, but it's not fast enough for me. I just want the answer right now. I don't want to wait anymore. I want answers. I want to know what the Pentagon knows. Okay, I want to know, how they know a lot more than what they're saying. They always have.